Okay, thank you very much, Marissa, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here tonight. And also thank you to the organizers who have invited me to speak today. It's really a great honor to be able to share a bit about Singapore's Smart Nation initiative, really from the perspective of a deep tech investor. So all Smart Nation or Smart City initiatives inevitably have got to be driven by political leadership. The obvious reason is because it involves too much infrastructure investment and regulatory changes to be otherwise. Our own Smart Nation initiative was kicked off by our Prime Minister in 2014 in a speech where he defined the vision, he laid down the objectives, and broadly defined the framework upon which our Smart Nation project was going to embark upon. So this is an adaptation of the original framework, but I like to use it as it clearly defines the key foundational layers that enable the services that contribute towards the definition of a smart nation. At its very center, you will find connectivity. This very basic infrastructure of connecting all people in the country on a reliable network really should not be underestimated. Indonesia is a good example. Their fiber optic network that helped to connect more than 150 million of its people in 2018 helped to propel startups like Gojek, Tokopedia, Bukalapak, Traveloka all into unicorn status. Singapore owns fiber optic network connects all homes and commercial properties. Coupled with a very comprehensive 4G network that covers the country, all the residents really can be connected via very simple devices like your handphone. And this network is likely to be upgraded in the next few years to 5G. The next, obviously, is the collection layer. We have a national sensor network that includes CCTVs, smart lamps, or the like. It helps collect data from all over the country to feed into platforms where people can develop more sophisticated services. Well, all this data being collected, it is really up to your imagination as to how you can use it to provide better services or enhance your existing products and services. However, one of the most critical components for this service delivery really is to have a very secure digital identity system. SingPass, which is Singapore's version of an authentication system, allows residents to execute extremely sophisticated transactions in a very secure manner. And another service, PayNow, which is our national digital payment system, provides another pillar from which all these services can all be brought together. Now, while all this infrastructure is necessary, startups or companies wishing to build products on top of this have to be mindful of engaging all stakeholders in their development. For instance, I've actually seen many fintech startups fail because they did not factor in regulatory hurdles they would need to overcome to go to market. At the same time, other people fail because they did not cater for the habits of users. It is very easy to say my product is more convenient to use than the current method, but if it's not convenient enough, it really doesn't change habits. I would like to think that for deep tech startups, SGInnovate plays a role in bringing all these stakeholders together. Marissa has already given a very brief outline as to what SGInnovate does, but maybe I can talk a little bit more about this. I won't spend too much time on it. We are an early stage deep tech investor. We are backed by the Singapore government through the Ministry of Finance, but we are overseen because of our deep tech focus by the National Research Foundation. We therefore really have two objectives which are relatively simple to express, but a little bit more difficult to achieve. The first is that we need to make money, and the second is that we need to help build the local deep tech ecosystem. These two objectives really are reflected in our functional units. Our community team seeks to bring together all the stakeholders in a given area of deep tech, not only for awareness, but also for education. Our venture building team brings research out of labs, builds companies around them and brings them to market. And our talent team connects the local and international talent within a very specific area. Finally, the investment function that I lead stands a little bit away from the other functional areas so that we can make impartial investment decisions. The areas at the bottom are those that we focus on for the moment: quantum technology, artificial intelligence, IoT, communications, biotech. But in the nature of deep tech, it's always shifting. So certain things that we might be focusing on today will become a little bit more irrelevant as time goes by. Now, not all our portfolio companies have a direct relation to the Smart Nation effort, but those that do tend to be more in the sensor or the communication space. So probably a lot of the questions that will be asked today will center around how has COVID-19 really affected startups, and the portfolios. And this is inevitably a question I get when I meet other investors. There's absolutely no doubt that COVID-19 is an economic and humanitarian disaster on a scale that honestly we have never encountered before in our lifetimes. And yet most of the companies in my portfolio are not really doing too badly. I mean, sure, of course, there was the initial complaint about lack of investor support in the early days because everyone wanted to have an extended runway. But actually, a good number of founders realized that they had to dig deep and be as entrepreneurial as possible in their companies if they wanted to come out of this whole thing alive. So they did what every good entrepreneur does. They identified the opportunity within the disaster and either pivoted or expanded their product line to cater for this opportunity. These are some examples of our companies who extended their product line within a relatively short space of time and taking advantage really of a shorter decision cycle than was previously available, actually secured very large commercial contracts that put them on a more stable footing. So all these companies, were in different areas before, COVID-19, and because of COVID-19, within a very short space of a couple of months, actually were able to change the product lines, refocus some of the machines that they had to take advantage of the opportunity that they saw in front of them. The question really is it because these were deep tech companies that they found it easy to pivot? Now, my personal opinion is that is not so. We saw a lot of deep tech companies actually go under in the last few months. What I believe, perhaps a bit optimistically, is that the founders in our portfolio companies, developed a spirit of true entrepreneurship that complements their existing spirit of innovation, which really helped them to move into different pathways. Okay, so this is the last slide. I have to just highlight that in a period where funding is extremely tight, economic sentiment is really as low as it can possibly be, that our startups still managed to secure 5 equity up rounds and 3 convertible notes to help them to extend their runway. And perhaps more importantly, 20 companies actually secured new commercial contracts in the last few months. I really do apologize if I appear to be boasting, but I'm truly extremely proud of our founders, and quite honestly, did not believe how quickly they were able to turn things around within such a short space of time. So for those of you who are founders or thinking of becoming founders, I have a few suggestions that you may wish to consider. The first is that liquidity remains available for the right companies. Funding is there. I've got many partners, I've got many friends in the VC ecosystem that say that, they have the liquidity, they just are wary of who to put the money in. So unless they see, real winners, or they see companies that are making a difference, they are going to keep it, for a rainy day. I'm not quite sure how much rainier it can be, but they say they're keeping it for a rainier day. The second is that there are massive opportunities now, especially in the areas of digitalization and healthcare. So I would suggest that anyone looking at opportunities really explore the opportunities there. Thirdly, always remain flexible. No one knows what the economy is going to look like next month, much less next year. So, try not to be too rigid in your way of thinking or in your assumptions of the market. The fourth is that most of today's tech giants were actually founded during downturns. Facebook, Google was a little bit before that, Amazon maybe a little bit before the dot-com bust. But a lot of these big companies that made it through the bust actually became very big global leaders in their space. So if you have done your homework, I really would suggest that you consider taking the plunge and starting your own business now. And lastly, but not least, and please keep this in mind, never forget that a good and sustainable company always have revenues that exceed their costs. I've already lived through 2 economic busts where people forgot the fundamentals and went after eyeballs or users as a performance indicator. You may call me old-fashioned, but in truth, these companies over the long term tend not to be able to break out of the shell and create those long-term tech giants that we see today. So with that, I would like to thank you all for your kind attention. If anyone wants to reach out to me, my email is on the slide. I wish you a great event and a very good afternoon to everyone. Thank you.